Today's episode is brought to you by FreedomProject Academy. Looking for a K-12 classical online school built on Judeo-Christian values? FPA is enrolling now for the fall. Request your free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com.
It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Before we get started, please hit that share button so we can educate more patriots across the country. Okay, we're kicking things off with Vicki McKenna and Culture Cast. Vicki, you're at work today. You talk show hosts do actually work occasionally.
Believe it or not, I'm actually on the job. So forgive the sort of chaotic background here, but in the studio.
Nice to know that you look good in white. We would never have known from your woman cave back home. So,
I would have normally worn OD green, but I'd forgotten that we were doing this podcast today. So I thought, darn it, I wish I would have picked a traditional camouflage.
Well, now it's going to be chronicled forever, and I suppose we shouldn't be surprised by our topic, the logical end to which all this critical race theory has been pushing us is now we have a school in Chicago that has decided they're going to implement race-based grading systems, which means that if you're white, you have to come to class, you have to turn in your assignments, and you have to behave. If you're not white, you don't have to turn in your homework, you don't have to come to school, and if you don't behave, well, there's nothing we can do about it. So here we now officially are segregating Americans along the lines of race.
No, it's worse than that. It's actually telling an entire group of people, have no ambition, don't try, don't work, don't do any of the things that are part of the success sequence. In the United States, it's really hard to fail. And here we have now the school system saying to one entire group of people, Black people, that not only are you being discouraged from accessing the success system that will allow you to compete and become a reasonably successful American. But we're telling you that if you do that, that somehow that's racism. And we're telling, so essentially think about this. You're going to tell every Black kid, don't try, don't succeed, don't accomplish anything. Meanwhile, the white kids who are going to have to work harder and the Asian kids who are going to have to work harder are actually going to be even that much better at accessing that success system and that success sequence, that you're going to continue to perpetuate the ever expanding claim of systemic racism. Meanwhile, you're not helping Black kids. You're just going to essentially doom them to not having the ability to even, compete on the most basic level to become a successful American. It's pathetic. You've got to hate Black kids to do this.
Yeah, I think what you said before is exactly correct. So you've got white liberals who are telling Black kids to stop trying, while forcing white kids to work harder, which is going to make smarter and more achieved white kids who will then go farther in the country in terms of wealth, which just proves how racist we all are, all because liberals think that Black kids just can't do it.
Exactly. It is a liberal conceit that Black children and Black people are never going to be able to actually, as I say, access this sequence of choices you have to make to become a successful American, that they're not capable. This goes back to Margaret Sanger, who had wanted to cleanse the population of Black people because she believed that they were intellectually lesser. How is this any different? You can't compete, you poor thing. We're not going to expect anything of you. We won't call your failure, but it will be failure because you are still going to be dooming people to second class status, second, third tier status, never to be expected to, access any way to become a successful citizen. So at the same time, it's going to make people resent people based on color. And, I thought we put that behind us with Martin Luther King Jr., who had moved the continuum of freedom, substantially forward in this country. But now here we are, where we are back to just simply judging people based on the content of not of the content of the character, but the content of the mass of their melanin.
Well, Martin Luther King is anathema because he actually suggested a world without color. We know it is a foremost premise of critical race theory that race is all you are allowed to see. Take a look at some of the posts from this. This is Oak Park and River Forest High School in the Chicago area, and this is Strategic Plan Priority 2, quote, transformative education. And here are some of the examples. Traditional grading practices perpetuate inequity and intensify the opportunity gap. So actually grading kids on how they're doing in the classroom, making sure they're learned, that makes the gap worse. So we got to stop doing it.
Right. I used to think that equity, simply meant preference for certain groups based on their status as oppressed. And now I just think that equity means to permanently destroy opportunity for people who maybe come from challenged backgrounds or folks who, don't have the same sort of stability in family. And now I just think it's about masking racist hatred that the left has for anyone who doesn't look like them. This is, and I think that they not only mask the racist hatred, but I think they convince themselves that it's the exact opposite. This is the way the psychology of this works. You're going to tell yourself that you're doing something good and decent and virtuous, when really what you're doing is just simply hiding your own racism behind policies that will absolutely ensure that the people you claim to care about will fail. So, I mean, there's a twisted psychology here, but I honestly think that this is just, the same old olive drab racism that we're used to from the Democrats going back to the Klan.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. After the break, we need to talk about the broader implications of this moving forward. We'll be right back.
With all the censorship taking place on social media platforms, we've made it easy to keep up with your favorite content. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app in your app store. Get access to 18 new videos a week, plus thousands of archived shows, lecture series, and educational animations. Download the Freedom Project Media app on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, or phone, and make sure you allow for notifications to keep you informed.
All right, we're back with Vicki McKenna and CultureCast. So, Vicki, we talked about this really ridiculous situation where black kids are literally being told, stop educating in the public schools because you can't compete with all these racist white kids who have all these advantages you don't, so stop. And what we're going to do is we're going to socially promote you, we're going to graduate you, we're going to send you off to college without any real achievements in the name of social justice. So where does this end, Vicki? I mean, you stop and think about it, because I can tell you this as a university
Civil War.
As a university professor, there is they are completely abetting this. They are taking these kids, even though they have no ability, they are bringing them to campus, they're giving them scholarships, they're giving them book allowances, they're giving them all sorts of financial aid, and then they're here, and then once they're here, you cannot fail them, you cannot refuse to promote them. So the universities are on board with us as well. And what about all those woke companies out there who seem to be suggesting that we don't care if your kids can read and write, if they're the right race, we're going to take them down the road?
Well, you know what, Duke, at the end of the day, they will care whether people can read and write, and they simply just won't hire black Americans, and depending upon how bad the education system does get, all Americans, they'll get H-1B visas and they'll fill the slots that way. The idea that, well, you know what, we'll absolutely promote someone who can't read, can't do math, doesn't know how to function in society, has been expected to be utterly functionally illiterate. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So what you're going to have is a bunch of people who are unmoored from any kind of scaffolding that allows them to build up enough skills so that they can be successful. And that creates, cognitive dissonance. That creates misery. That creates anger. That creates resentment. That sows the seeds for revolution, doesn't it? And isn't that maybe what we're ultimately looking at here? You're going to have resentment, racial resentment between whites and blacks, or Asians and blacks, or whoever and blacks, and so you're going to keep stoking that fire of racial resentment. At the same time, you're going to ensure that a population of people who have been essentially told to be illiterate, that to be illiterate is to be virtuous somehow. Well, that's going to be a recipe for failure, and that is going to create a massive amount of misery and disconnectedness, chaos and nihilism in that community. And so you're going to have racial hatred clashing with anger and resentment. And that is, tell me how that's not the seed for the revolution that the left claims that they ultimately want, to tear down all the structures, functional structures of American society, to be rebuilt in whatever kind of, Bolshevik tyranny they imagine is going to be the ultimate paradise.
When the book is finally written on what lost the United States to socialism, it will be this, that we were rather than being systemically racist, particularly white people, we were so afraid of race. We had been so treated and so beat down about race that we don't say anything, we don't intervene. When our own kids are being racialized in the schools, we say nothing. When the book is finally written, it will be using a made-up racial crisis to completely transform the nature of this country.
And create and institutionalize and permanently ensconce a violent hatred between people based on skin color, the exact opposite of what the civil rights movement was. But again, I think that's the point. And I think you really have to hate humanity, and you certainly have to hate black people to do this.
Yes, I agree. Take one last slide from what's coming, the next steps here at Oak Park and River Forest High School. The administration and faculty will examine grading reporting practices in academic and elective courses, utilizing evidence-backed research and the racial equity analysis tool. In other words, wherever there is a gap, even a slight one between a white student and a black or Hispanic one, that's systemic racism. That gap has to be artificially removed, not by actually teaching kids, but by simply adjusting the white kids down and the minority kids up.
You know what? This is another opportunity for us to say, get your kids out of this environment. There is no reason to send your kids to public school. You as a mom or as a dad in a library card are going to be better for your child and educating your child than any kind of environment like this will be. It is absolutely now, without question, that there is probably no hope of fixing these schools when they are willing to, in the face of this parent revolt of this past spring and all of the anger, the lawsuits, the exposure of DEI and CRT and the trans agenda, and what you have from the elites, the educrats, is to double down and triple down and rub your nose in it. There's no reason to keep your kids in these institutions. As I said, you and a library card are going to better educate your child than, the highest dollar private American educational institution, and certainly even much better than the high performing, whatever that means, public school institution. So homeschool your kids, figure out how to do it.
Yeah, one of the major takeaways from this conversation and this behavior from the public schools is the federal government, the Department of Education, the colleges, the universities, many of our corporations are standing firmly behind resegregation and refighting racial battles that were over 50, 60 years ago. That's what's coming. And again, not only do you have to pull your kids out of the public schools, we as Americans, particularly if you are not minorities, we have to no longer take seriously the trope of white supremacist. If we don't fight the idea that American culture is exclusively white supremacist, then they have a good justification for getting away from it. And
exactly.
And where are our churches? Where are our Republican politicians? Where are our so-called conservatives? No one's fighting that battle.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on all items at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support this show by supporting a great American company.
It's time now for Reclaiming America with our very own counterculture mom, Tina Griffin. Tina, why do you bring me such pain? Because this first story is gruesome, demonic, as they've said. It's all about, a mom, supposedly, and I'll put that in air quotes, because what did she say to her baby?
I could have killed you, but I chose to let you live. I chose to let her live, as in I had a choice. All women should have a choice.
Do you realize what you just said? Killed. I cannot wrap my brain around this, no matter how I look at it.
If you don't want to use the word kill, that's fine. If you want to use the word kill, that's fine. When you use hand sanitizer, you kill germs. I could have simply chosen to let you not exist, but I let you exist. I let you form past the zygote phase.
Is that better?
So yes, I realize what I just said, and I stand by it. If you want to get an abortion, get an abortion. If you don't want to get an abortion, don't get an abortion, but don't try to oppress my rights.
My rights, not the baby's rights. You know, I have a couple T-shirts in my closet from Cole 1972. Dear friend Carla, I've known her for decades. She has one of the only pro-life fashion lines. Check it out, col1972.com. Tons of great conversation starter pro-life T-shirts, where they give back 100% of their proceeds to pro-life causes. And one of their shirts that I have basically states that the person saying they want to be pro-choice, which there is no pro-choice, it's pro-life or pro-death. But this shirt basically says, you had the chance to live, let your baby live. The people that are pro-choice, they got to live. Their mothers chose life. I will never be able to wrap my brain around it.
And I always like saying, you did have choices. You do have choices. Death, murdering, is not one of those choices. You still have choice. And so any of the time they make this argument, and the simple fact that she's saying it to the face of her baby, I can only pray that she changes her mind. That over the time this baby shows her what is truth, and the demons, go away from her, because otherwise what does that poor baby have anything to grow up in, and what is that baby going to see moving forward?
I can't tell you how bad. I know you'd say the same thing. I wanted to drive in my truck, drive, a couple hours here to grab that child, just to give it a home that it deserves. And the sad thing is, we have our younger generation that are total pro-lifers. There's so many out there, so many young people that get it. They see the truth. Mark Harrington, we have LifeSite News, all these world changers showing the truth of what abortion really is. And we have a pro-life series coming out next week. Everybody on Freedom Project Media, if you love this program, you will love that series. We have AJ Hurley on, another hero, David Daleiden. These people are on the front of the battle lines exposing Planned Parenthood. AJ Hurley I just interviewed yesterday. I was bawling last night going through my editing notes of what abortion really is. Pictures I've seen for 25 years that our younger generation never sees. But the second they see one image, they start to question everything. They're on fire. They want the truth. When they see the truth, you can't shut them up.
And we at least have one positive story here of a man who is also speaking the truth. There is a video basically capturing a pro-life man who's just showing love basically to everyone around him, and it happens to be in front of these pro-abortion protesters.
Hey, I'm so happy your mom didn't abort you. I am so happy. I wouldn't be able to see or talk to you guys.
Well, as you can see from that video, this is what it means to be the hands and feet of Christ. He was yelled at, nasty words, treated improperly, and yet he still told people that Jesus loves them. And that's what we have to do in these end times. I mean, look what happened to Christ. He was also persecuted and died because of us. The other crazy thing that I just want to touch base really quick that people might not be aware, and it goes with both stories today. This is what's surfacing now. This is how evil our culture is. And why do we show these stories every week? It's not to have us not sleep at night. It's to have us be active and proactive and in the community and sharing truth and giving to pro-life causes and saving babies and talking to pregnant moms that might be contemplating abortion when you're at the local grocery store that you don't know about, is because there's now information surfacing of medical waste companies that are burning aborted babies for electricity in America. That we talk about next week. It's insane. Lifenews.com says that California Democrats right now are pushing a bill that would legalize infanticide for 28 days after a baby is born. If they are currently doing that to infants around the U.S. right now, who's to say they can't do that to us? And let me just tell you something. I have way too much proof after 27 years of research on these elites where they are literally setting up America for having that happen. So I'm like, red alert here, people. We have got to fight for liberty in America. We've got to fight for life. If we can't fight for life, nothing else matters.
Absolutely. And Tina, we got to keep the people informed, and they can stay informed by watching what you're doing. So where can everyone find more of your content?
Absolutely. And I want to leave us on a high note. Okay, this man was a hero. He went to a pro-death scenario, this pro-choice, which is really pro-death rally. We should be doing that as well. I've done that before. I had a pro-life t-shirt on, went to D.C. in the middle of all these women, and I have had great conversations. Obviously survived. They came out of there. I'm here today. But that's what we all have to do. Just one scenario, one idea. Go to thecounterculturemom.com and download from our website our app, or you can go to iTunes, Google Play, wherever you get an app. Download Counterculture Mom. We have a bunch of people on our team, over 20 people daily, pumping out positive alerts for us to know how to get involved, to make a change in America. We all want to be involved. A lot of parents saying, what can we do to make a difference? Check out that app, download it. Also, it will alert you throughout the week of the pop culture alerts ahead of time of what Hollywood hogwash, what they're trying to pump out into our children's brains to wreak havoc and trash their whole foundation, which should be in the Lord, not Satan. That's basically what it comes down to.
Oakley dokley, it is time for Trending Left, and we've compiled some of the craziest stories and images making waves across the interwebs for your viewing pleasure or distaste, whichever one. Today, we're going to start with the woke military, as it appears Dr. Seuss is now too traumatizing for the families of the men, air quotes, and women protecting our country. It's been more than 50 years since Dr. Seuss released The Lorax. However, the Travis Air Force Base Library has now slapped a warning label on the classic tale. The advisory reads, older titles by Dr. Seuss in our library may contain inappropriate racist depictions and stereotypes and/or the negative depictions or mistreatment of people or cultures. And/or. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Mitchell Memorial Library, Travis Air Force Base, California. That says it all right there, California. Because everything in California is crazy, and if words by a children's author hurt you, then clearly you're not ready for combat. Meanwhile, as we move into June, it's that month, get ready for some non-stop rainbow mafia pride being shoved into your face 24/7. And to kick that off, we're going to start in Wake County, North Carolina, where a preschool teacher has just resigned after they were caught straight up indoctrinating 3 and 4-year-olds. According to reports, the teacher used pride flashcards to teach the kids to love and appreciate the pride flag. The teacher also taught the children colors by using LGBT flashcards, including the one you see there, featuring a pregnant man. Because men can, in this crazy world we live in, can get pregnant now, but they really can't. Just so you're aware. Now, speaking of little kids being indoctrinated, a preschool in Howard County, Maryland is also doing their part to convince children as young as 4 years old that they could be a different gender. A virtual event being held next week will feature the reading of a story called Kelvin. The book tells the story of a young girl who likes to cross-dress and eventually becomes a transgender boy. The book's summary reads, Kelvin has always been a boy, even if the world sees him as a girl. He knows who he is in his heart and in his mind, but he hasn't yet told his family. Could they have put any more he's and his in there? Now, if you're going to have a book called Kelvin, it better be followed with Calvin Coolidge, because he's a president you should all learn about instead of Calvin, the girl. Now, let's head over to Bremerton, Washington. Oh, geez. Washington, where Fairview Middle School is doing their part to make sure that kids learn how to be a trans ally. As you can see, the poster features the statement, how to be a trans ally, and then has colorful sections including transphobic words, coming out, just ask, show your support, and gender identity is not sexual identity. Thankfully, not everyone agrees with the agenda being pushed by the school. In fact, a student actually had the courage finally, to put a handwritten note on top of the poster saying, stop teaching us about gender confusion and instead teach us math, writing, reading, U.S. history, and other school stuff, not gender confusion. That is an automatic A for that student. That student basically just won Student of the Year award, and I am proud that that student exists because we have way too many kids who would just go right along with it. But we're going to stop there for today because I need to wrap these things up with America's pastime, as professional baseball has also decided to embrace and financially support the LGBT agenda. And to kick off Pride Month, the Detroit Tigers hosted their Pride Night. Fans who purchased a special ticket were gifted a Detroit Tigers Pride shirt, and they got to choose a local LGBT charity to support with their ticket purchase. It's important to note that some of the featured charities promote puberty blockers for children, medical transitions, drag queen events, and LGBT sex ed for kids. Because America's pastime, obviously, has to be about LGBT. It can't just be about baseball. Well, that's going to wrap up this segment. You know, next week we will have more craziness.
And that's going to do it for the show. I'm Dr. Duke. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.